In today's episode, I'm going to talk to Andrew about mCommuning. Hi, I am Elysium and welcome to my channel. And Andrew, thanks for coming back. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me back, Elysium. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Everything is all right. We're here to talk about mCommuning. Now, this is something that you developed. So what I'm going to do is just let you tell us about what it is and where it's come from, and then I will just chip in here and there just to help everybody understand, because it's a big concept to get your head around. So first of all, why don't you tell us where it came from?
Okay, it is as you say, a really, really big subject. It was also the first white paper we created for Utopian. So to some degree, it always feels a little bit like when we talk about mCommuning, we're talking about the roots of Utopian. Probably the best place to start would be the name. So mCommuning. As you know, I'm an membraning coach, and I have been influenced somewhat by the work of people like Dr. Suzanne Henry, Sarah Brothers, and of course Grant Suserlin, who was the genius mind that came up with membraning originally. And during my training to be an membraning coach, I was lucky enough to hear for the first time the last interview that Grant Suserlin gave, where he shifted a little from talking about what can we do today to make ourselves the best version of ourselves to what can we do today to make our communities the best community that they can be, the best version of the community they can be, and what can we do to help that to happen, as well as be the best version of ourselves. And that kind of was a shift for me at the time into, okay, how can we create communities that are more engaged and more effective in the way that we take part and communicate within those. So I guess then I started to look at the communities I've been involved in. I've been in tech, as you know, for around 30 years. I've been involved in lots of communities, and one of the big problems that we always come up against with communities, especially if you're being brought into a community that already exists, is, oh, well, you know, the only way we can create content is if we create it ourselves. Our members don't seem to create content. We have the one where lots of people come in, they create profiles, and then they don't participate, they don't really take part, they don't engage in the community. As I've said in other videos, if you have a group of people of any size and they don't engage, that's not a community, that's just a group of people. So then we started to look at, okay, how can we create communities, make them engaged, and get them to commune, to communicate with one another, to create and co-collaborate and be a part of something that is the best version of our community today.
This is exactly the roots of where everything started. And hearing you talk about this again is like being in a time machine and traveling back to a year ago, just over a year ago, when we were starting these discussions and when we started that process of the papers going backwards and forwards. So it's actually, for me, it's a really lovely thing to think about again. Okay, now I'm going to display the diagram. So how about this? Can you talk about this diagram? Because again, it was one of the first things that you showed to me. And so, yeah, it's another trip down memory lane. So here we go. Let's show everyone else, and then you can tell us about it.
This diagram here, this is actually what we call the Utopian Multiverse. And I'm not going to get into the complications of why it's a multiverse, because that's for another video. But in the layout that you're looking at the moment, we're looking at it basically on the purpose of relevance. So the way that Utopian works is it's an interconnecting network of small communities where the members are stakeholders within those communities, therefore they're more engaged in what they're doing. Partly they're more engaged because the level of relevance makes a difference, and partly because we have TSOP, total state presence algorithm, which is an important part of mCommuning, because what TSOP does is it literally rewards our members for being active, for being creative, for being collaborative, for being engaged. And we have data from the first 4 months of using the system, and we know that that process actually works, and we can look at how that's the case. So I think the first thing for us to look at, Elysium, is why do we separate communities into smaller groups of relevance? So if we perhaps bring up our diagram of Gestalt psychology and how that works within mCommuning, what we can see here is we've got the same text twice. On one side, we have the words all arranged all over the page. They're not in the right order, and they don't really mean anything. If we take those same words and we arrange them into proper sentences, into proper paragraphs, suddenly those paragraphs make sense. Suddenly we have some common sense forming in what we're actually presenting here. Now, I have used this example a few times, but I refer back now to your former career as a choir mistress.
I never was a choir mistress. It was a lie.
Yes, but in a deliberate lie that you gave in a video last year where you said you were a choir mistress. It's actually a really good example, because if we have 200 choir singers and they're all singing from completely different hymn sheets and they're all dotted around the world, singing at different times and in different ways, you just end up with cacophony. It's not understandable. If you actually arrange all of those choir singers to be using the same hymn sheets from the same place, singing the same songs at the same time, it's not only loud and beautiful, but you actually understand every single word. That is why we arrange communities into relevance. Because you might have, for example, a small community of something that on its own is not particularly together or spoken about loud. Let's say you have a new methodology arrive in widgets, and that new methodology, you've only got 300 people in the whole world who know about it. So what you would end up with traditionally is those 300 people would all be on social media. They'd all have maybe 6 or 7 different accounts. For example, they'd be doing videos on YouTube, they'd be on LinkedIn with their profile, they'd be doing a group on Facebook, etc. But it wouldn't be joined up. They'd all be doing their part, but you might listen to a little bit over there, a little bit over there. But if you put them all together in a single community, then what happens is they start pushing energy out to what we call the outer layers. Now, the outer layers, in reality, we have the social media outer layer and the business outer layer, or the commerce outer layer. So that's effectively all the businesses in the world, and it's all the social media platforms in the world. And that's the important thing to remember with Utopian. We're not in competition with other businesses. We're not in competition with social media platforms. Quite the opposite. We're their friends. We're there to enhance them and the people who are engaged in those businesses and engaged in those social media platforms. So one of the ways that we can do that, for example, is if we look at pure social sharing through mCommuning, we bring up this diagram as regards to sharing out to the outer layer. You can see that on the left-hand side, what we actually have is our joined up footprint. Now that's important because if we just refer back to our widget methodology people a moment, they've got their videos on YouTube and they've got their LinkedIn and all those other bits and pieces. But within Utopian, within a Utopian community, you bring all of that in and you put it all into one place. So if we use Scribble as an example, because that's our premier community at the moment, if you go into a community profile, you'll see that first of all, it's a proven profile. That means that people can actually put evidence into the profile to prove what they say is real. The other thing is they can actually have all of their social media addresses in there. They can have all of their bios, all of their information from all over the internet can all be in one place. The second thing then is we have this layer where we can actually message out to the social media layers of Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, etc., etc. Now, in true mCommuning, what actually happens is one message goes out and it splits out into the different platforms, and then it comes back in from those platforms with interest. We call that energy exchange, and we've seen this a number of times with Scribble where you actually build up a bit of a storm. Something happens inside of, for example, Scribble, that information gets pushed out to Twitter, to Facebook, etc. And then what happens is it stirs up interest and it brings people back in. And those people come back in, they then join the stir and they push it back out again, and more come in, and we see this exchange of energy backwards and forwards between the two. And that ties in very nicely to our utopian first law, which states that people are the most durable store of value. So that value, which we often refer to as energy, we have that initially as potential energy, the ability to message, to communicate, to commune, to create, to collaborate. We turn that into something which is pushed out to the outer layers, and that converts, because remember, in physics, no energy can be destroyed, it can only be converted or changed. That's what we do. We convert that energy in the outer layers and comes back in. It might also work with this business coming in. You know, we might have a single advertiser who is in our community. If they were on Twitter just throwing out their adverts, they might not get seen. But if they're there as part of a community throwing out their adverts, it brings in more people who are relevant to what they're selling, who might actually buy from them. So if we talk again about our widget providers, if they're just dotted around the world selling widgets, they might get a few sales. But if you've got all 300 in the community, all advertising outward together, you're going to have a lot more people coming in to look at what these widgets are. You're far more likely to sell these widgets, get new people who want to train to be widget people. And you therefore then get more advertisers who then push out more to the outlay, brings in yet more people. And effectively in that environment, every time a single person advertises or shares something outward or inward, they're doing it for the whole community. They're not just doing it for themselves. That's why we reward it.
I had no idea, thinking back to a year ago when we were initially having these discussions and sharing this work and growing it into what it is now, I had no idea that we would be sitting here today talking about this work on YouTube even. I had no idea that we would have all of the plans and the ideas for taking this further that we've got. And I don't want to reveal a lot about where this is going, but it's going in some very interesting directions.
It is. I wonder how much of a hint I can drop without you waving your finger at me. So let's try. From a technology perspective, there are two channels at the moment that we are currently working on to enhance mCommuning further. One is going to be appearing directly within the community. The other is something that will be an add-on. There you go.
That's suitably vague, and I think we'll stop there. Thank you. I can say, though, that even though I didn't know where this journey would take us, it is every day absolutely exhilarating. And I'm delighted to be on this journey and doing what we're doing, because it feels like it's really got the ability to make a huge difference. And really, that's at the core of what we do.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, that it's evidence-based. We're not just saying mCommuning works or Utopian works. You know, there might be people there saying, oh, yeah, we've heard it all before. But the fact is, we've managed to have our stakeholders, our members who are the stakeholders within that community, create 1,300 pieces of unique content, poems and short stories. They've done that in less than 4 months with virtually no interaction from us other than, here's the community, it's your community, you're not just members and stakeholders, you run with it, you make it what you want. You know, we haven't gone to them and say, you must do this. They've taken it on themselves to do that. And they've been amazing with doing that. They've been amazing with bringing in friends and pushing information out and pulling people and information in. We saw at Christmas the first time mCommuning working, and we saw it again at New Year, and we've seen it again and again ever since. We've seen that the communities that you grow within a utopian framework, they do spill out in groups into other social media platforms, and those groups do actually create interest and energy and bring all of that back into their home, to their their framework where they are actually sitting within the utopian universe. I think this has enormous significance for those who are talking at the moment a little bit about decentralization, because what we're proving within Utopian is that indeed, if you do have smaller communities networked together and you make those people within those communities stakeholders and you give them the right incentives, the right rewards, the right reasons to be creative and collaborative, that's exactly what they are. You know, we want to create communities where people are happy, where they don't just wake up and go to sleep on some kind of work, rest, repeat cycle, but they actually get up and enjoy what they're doing all day. And then they go to bed feeling like they've achieved something, but they go to bed happy. And they've put something into the community, again, going back to the very beginning, during the full cycle, right around to where we started. They are being the best version of themselves and the happiest version of themselves, but they're also doing the best they can that day to help to create the best version of their community.
So beautiful and beautifully explained as well. Thank you ever so much for coming on and talking to us about mCommuning.
Thank you so much. You know me, I'll talk about mCommuning for hours given the chance.
Don't forget, all of the normal ways are down below to get in touch. And there's just enough time for me to thank you for liking, subscribing and putting the alert notification on. And remember, if you like this channel, don't tell me. Tell your friends. I'll see you next time.